Okay. Okay. Perfect. So this is essentially, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this book, but I think most of us are because Jenna, I know you recently sent over like a handout on the happiness trap.
Mhm.
But so essentially, this is a part of the happiness trap, and it's like a skill. And it's a skill for anyone who has either set a goal in their life, maybe has wanted to do something, maybe take that next step in their life, but essentially they haven't been able to follow through on it. So we kind of have to think of with our clients like, well, what has stopped you from following through with that goal? And so in the happiness trap, they have kind of come up with this acronym that spells out fear, which I love because I think a lot of times fear is probably one of those things that holds us back from accomplishing our goals or again any sort of change. um, but the acronym actually covers most of the common barriers. So before we kind of get into it, I love using this with clients who I kind of feel like maybe for a while in sessions they have brought up something that they like wanted to do, or they brought up something that they wanted to change in their life, and it just feels like every session they keep bringing it up and we come up with ideas or steps or goals for them to accomplish whatever it is that they're wanting to change or grow in with their life, but they get stuck. Um, and so I kind of love bringing this up with them. And a few examples of like clients that I've just had is I've had a client in the past that I've used this with where they had to take an exam to like further their career. And they had taken this exam 3 times before and had failed. And it was time for them to take it for a fourth time, but they put it off for 2.5 years. So this was something that we used, went through it. Eventually, they used all the skills that we kind of went over and they passed their exam. I've also used this for clients who maybe one in particular was a client who was kind of in between, this idea of like wanting to essentially quit their job and be a stay-at-home mom, and that was like a goal of theirs for a while, but they had a lot of like fears and barriers that were holding them back. So this was something that we went through, and now they have reached their goal of being a stay-at-home mom. So you can definitely use it with a bunch of different clients, and again, depending on kind of what they're struggling with. But I'm going to have you guys today kind of practice this. So we'll go over what this acronym stands for, and then I'll kind of walk you guys through like how I walk it through with my clients. So fear, the acronym stands for fusion, excessive goals, avoidance of discomfort, and remoteness from values. So fusion is obviously the stuff that our mind tells us that gets in the way when we get caught up in it. So these are our cognitive distortions. These are our unhelpful thinking styles, things like I'm not good enough, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this, what if this happens, X, Y, and Z. Excessive goals is sometimes our goal is just too big, or we actually lack the skills or the resources in order to complete this goal. And so maybe we kind of have to reevaluate, the goal at hand. A big one that I notice a lot in my clients, especially clients who struggle with panic disorder and OCD, is the avoidance of discomfort. So this unwillingness to make room for the discomfort that this challenge brings, because when you have a goal for yourself or there's a change, obviously it's gonna come with a lot of uncomfortable emotions. So most of us don't like that. We like comfort, and so we will avoid that challenge. And then a big one too is remoteness from values. So maybe you set this goal a long time ago and you've kind of maybe just lost touch with or forgetting like why this is important to you or what was so meaningful about this goal in the first place. So what we're going to have you guys do today is I'm going to have you either think of a goal that you have currently in your life that maybe you haven't followed through on, or it's been a while and you just kind of keep putting this goal off. Or if you can think back to a time in your life where you set a goal for yourself, but it was really, really hard for you to follow through, but you've now overcome it. So Think of either of those situations, and I want you to write down in as few words as possible everything that has stopped you from following through with this goal currently, or in the past, what has stopped you from following through with a goal. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to write that down. You don't have to think of the acronym just yet, that will come in a second. I just want you to write down whatever comes to mind for you. Okay. Do we need a little bit more time, or are we good to move forward? Good. Okay. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is you're going to go back and label each answer with one or two or however many of the letters that can kind of fit into what best describes this barrier. So, in other words, if it was fusion with a story, so for example, I will fail, it's too hard, I'll just do it later, you would label that barrier with an F. If it was an excessive goal, so again, maybe you lacked time, money, health, facilities, skills, support, or if it was just too big, you would label that barrier with an E. If it was avoidance of discomfort, so unwilling to make room for anxiety, frustration, fear of failure, you would label it with an A. And then if it was remoteness from your values, so maybe you forgot why you set that goal, you lost touch with the underlying value of that goal, label it with an R. And then usually if I were with a client, this would kind of be the time that I would pause and we would kind of go through discussing each of their barriers, discussing what letter they put down. And obviously I would be aware of what their goal was or what they were struggling with. But if anyone feels comfortable and wants to share a little bit about maybe a goal that you thought of, and then one example of like a barrier you wrote down and how it fits into this acronym of fear.
I can go. So my goal was competing in an open water swimming race called Big Shoulders. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's like in the lake every summer, like late summer. And one of the barriers that I wrote down was just feeling nervous about the length of the course, because it is like, I think, a mile or two. And I also have, well, this is, I guess, another one, but I've never done open water swimming before. So those two are a little bit nerve-wracking for me. So for those ones, do I also like say if it's fusion or, okay.
Yeah.
So I said for like feeling nervous about the length of the course, I said it was fusion because I just feel like it's too hard. Like I'm just scared that that's just too hard for me, or just feeling nervous about like my ability. But I also feel like it could also be avoidance of discomfort, because it's not like there's no way that I could do it. It's just more of like, just that nervousness is hard to come to terms with a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the like never done open water swimming before. That's more of like excessive goal. I've never done it, and I just feel like I have to practice a lot first before I were to do like an open water course.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And something too that like I find is like a lot of times your barrier will probably fit with at least two of these. I mean, sometimes I'll have clients where it really is just like one, where it's like maybe just an excessive goal, but usually it's like a little bit of like two of them kind of in there. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
I can go. Mine was just kind of exploring different ideas when it came to like teaching more or less classes at the Pure Bar over here. And so just like bringing that attention to the owner. And so the like three top things that are kind of a common theme for some barriers for goal creating and setting for myself is just like that conflict that comes up from time to time with another person, and just the fear of conflict. And then so that was going to be the I label that as an A. So avoidance of like that discomfort. It's like, I don't want to rock the boat, that kind of stuff. Also remoteness from values, excessive goals, because I want to make sure that, like I'm presenting myself in this, like great lights, pretty much hitting all the buttons there. Another one is like worrying about what other people would like say, or like other judgments from other people. And so I labeled that as like losing touch with my values as well, because it's like, why do I care what other people think in this situation? And again, with the fusion piece of that as well. And then, like the internal self-judgment, internal battles. I can see I labeled that with the F, the E, and the A.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that too, yours really sound a lot like to what I'll hear with like clients, where it's a lot of kind of just like these inner, I mean, again, like fusion's a big one. So like these inner thoughts of like what we tell ourselves of like, okay, it's going to go this way, or it's going to look like this, or I can't do this. So I find that like fusion is a big one that a lot of people label. And I think what's nice about this is like, again, as therapists, I think we have a really easy time being able to tell like when is it fusion, when is the goal maybe a little too excessive, but With clients, I think when it's their own goal, and like we can even relate to this too, we kind of just get lost in all of it, where it just feels like there's so many different reasons that we are avoiding this or putting this goal off. So really being able to like break it down and label it and be like, oh, okay, this is like what my mind is telling me. And oh, I actually don't have the skill here, or oh, I'm avoiding a certain emotion, and knowing that there's kind of a reason to it, I find makes the client personalize it a lot less, for maybe not following through with a goal that they have set. So thank you for that. So now we get to the fun part. So the anecdote for fear is dare. So it's going to all be the exact opposite of what the fear acronym stands for. So D is going to be defusion. A is the acceptance of discomfort. R is setting realistic goals. And then E is actually embracing your values. So this is where the ACT comes in. So now what we're going to do is you're going to go back to your barriers and you're going to write out how you can essentially deal with them using DARE. So here's just a few suggestions of like what this kind of looks like. So some diffusion strategies: naming the story, acknowledging what sort of cognitive distortion this is, right? If it's judging, if it's labeling, if it's catastrophizing, simply letting your thoughts come and go. Acceptance strategies, so naming the feeling, observing it, rating it on a scale, commit to allowing it, making room for it, giving it a shape and a color. So again, allowing it and accepting it to be there. Realistic goal setting. So if you lack the skills, maybe we're actually going to readjust our goals to set goals around learning the skills. If it's too big, maybe we need to break it down into smaller parts. And then embracing your values. So connecting with what matters to you about this goal. Even sometimes I'll have to kind of go over values again with clients and then asking, is this truly meaningful? Is it actually aligned with one of the values you just listed? Is it really important to you? So what you'll do is you'll kind of go through again all the different barriers that you wrote down, and you'll write one of these, so either D, A, R, or E, as a way that you can essentially work through and challenge one of the F, E, A, or R's. And what you'll notice is they kind of have buddies. So obviously fusion, you're probably going to use D, defusion strategies to help overcome it. And then again, like the avoidance of emotion, you'll probably write down A and using acceptance strategies to kind of overcome the barrier. So take some time and just write down how you can respond to the barriers that you listed above with using one of these strategies, or multiple if you want to use multiple. Okay. Does anyone want to share one of the techniques that they have selected for overcoming a barrier?
For me, I found the connecting to values really helpful because it was like something that I just was feeling really stuck on. And I'm like, like what is happening here? And then just by embracing the value and taking a deeper look at it, I was able to discover it's just like I was able to discover a lot about it, of why there was like that resistance. Because oftentimes for me, like if I'm connected to the value, if I'm connected to the why, I could usually find a way through it.
Mhm.
But if I don't have like that rooted value in there, that's when it's like very difficult. So reconnecting to the value is for me the thing that's going to be able to like move this and shift this so that I can reach this goal.
Totally. Yeah. And the client earlier that I gave an example of where they had failed an exam, 3 times prior and were wanting to take another one, we found that their values was actually something that was missing too, and them kind of going through with their goal. Because they were really wanting to do this to essentially like show people that they could, because a lot of people in their office knew that they had failed this exam and kind of like knew that they weren't moving along with their hiring class. And so they got really wrapped up in like what other people were thinking about them. But that wasn't a value of theirs. It was actually the complete opposite of that. And so they weren't really able to kind of move through the goal because they were essentially doing it for the wrong reason. So they still had that goal of like, they want to pass this exam, but we had to rework, okay, well, why is it actually meaningful to you? Like, how is this going to push you in the direction of life that you want to go? So yeah, I think like values is a huge one, especially too, if you ever feel like clients, even if their goal is like something within therapy and they're getting stuck and maybe not showing up as much, or, maybe not being open as much. It's kind of like going back to the value of like, okay, well, why is therapy important to you? Why are we showing up every single week, and kind of redefining that. So yeah, I think values is a hugely important one with goals.
Yeah, I found it especially because the goal that I have is not like something I haven't like done before.
Yeah.
And so like we were saying with your client, it sounds similar where it's like he's tried. And so you start to kind of give up in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because you just need to get like rerouted and like, why is this important to me? And then that like reignites the ability to keep going.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Anybody else?
One of the original ones that I had was like a fear of failure, which I had labeled, wait a minute. Oh, no, studying is too hard. Example. It's exactly what you were saying. I'm trying to retake my test and there's a whole lot of barriers to this. Okay. But studying is too hard. And I put that down as fusion originally. And so I'm going to use defusion for that. And all that keeps coming to my brain is, I think it's the movie Brave. Well, yeah, that would make sense, right? It's the opposite of, fear. And then you can be brave, which is doing things even when you're afraid. So rather than saying like studying is too hard, I'm going to fail, saying like I can be brave and study anyways and do the hard thing. So doing a little cognitive reframe.
Yes. Love that. It's like, yeah, it can be hard. That can be true. And you have probably done other extremely hard things in your life and have gotten through that or have still done that. And also too, like just because it's hard doesn't automatically mean you're going to quote unquote fail at it.
Yeah. And I should say it's also avoidance originally. So
yeah.
A little bit of acceptance in there as well.
Yeah. A little bit of everything in there. Yeah. So yeah, I'll kind of go through that with my clients too, of like, all right, let's go through the DARE acronym and let's see what things you came up with and essentially not like set new goals, but give you these strategies to use when you find yourself really connecting to an unhelpful thought that your mind is sending you, or if you feel like you're disconnected from your values again. How can we kind of go back to this to remind ourselves, hey, there's actually things that we can do to help us move through whatever is holding us back, which will then help propel us in the direction of our goal. So this last little part here, and I will usually ask my clients this question, is are you willing to make room for the difficult thoughts and feelings that show up, because they will show up, without getting caught up in them or struggling with them, and take effective action in order to do what matters deep in your heart. And that's one thing that I love about this book with like the happiness trap, is they talk about like the struggle switch, and essentially this idea of like difficult thoughts and emotions and feelings will always be present in life. But if you have your struggle switch on, like a light switch, you're going to make things a lot more difficult for yourself, and you're getting really caught up in things, and you're trying to push them away, and you don't want to feel, and you don't want to have all this, ickiness surrounding you. But if you choose to turn that struggle switch off and you just allow them to be there, you accept these thoughts and these feelings as they show up, and continue to live in line with like your values, to do what matters most to you, you can get to your goal. But, most clients, I will say yes to this. So it's like, okay, if this is a yes, then let's give it a go. Like, let's continue to reach and work towards this goal and see if you get there. I have had some clients say no, like they're still scared, and mostly it's because they don't want to feel the discomfort. So if you say no to this question, then consider these questions. Does this really and truly matter to you? And if it doesn't at this time, then okay, maybe it's a goal that we let go of, and maybe it's a goal that we revisit. Sometimes too, maybe even having a little bit of distance from this goal can actually make you realize how much it does matter to you. Another question too, if it does matter, then what is the cost of you avoiding it or putting it off? So for my client that had put off studying for 2.5 years after they had failed, they were kind of already seeing the consequences of them putting it off, and they were feeling really, really stuck in their career. They didn't feel like they were moving forward with, their friends or their hiring class or whoever it might have been. And then this last question that I absolutely love asking and kind of posing as a question for clients is, would you rather have the, vitality draining pain of staying stuck, or the life enhancing pain of moving forward? And I love this statement because it's like, both situations are extremely hard and both situations are extremely painful, but one pain is causing you to stay stuck and to not live in line with your values and to not move forward and challenge yourself. And then one pain, you are going to learn things, and you are going to learn a lot about yourself, and you are going to enhance your life and move forward. So again, it's this question of like, let's choose our heart here. What pain do we want to feel? What pain is going to have a better outcome at the end of the day? And I will say this question is usually what gets clients to say, okay, I would rather have pain that is going to propel me forward in life. Because again, it's something that is unavoidable. But any questions or thoughts on this, feelings on this?
Love it. It's great. Stealing
Yay.
it, using it. Thank
Yes,
you.
of course. Yeah, please, like, use it. I use it all the time for my clients, like I said, in so many different situations, whether it's, doing an exposure with a client, whether it's something that they've been working on or trying to work towards for years and haven't accomplished. If it's a new goal, I'll even go through this with them of like, hey, like, let's kind of get ahead of ourselves, because there's probably going to be some things that come up, some barriers. So like, let's work through this too. But yeah, it's really, really great. And again, it goes hand in hand with the happiness trap, which is also a book I feel like I recommend at least once a month for clients, especially clients who maybe have like a difficult time with really accepting uncomfortable emotions or discomfort, or sometimes clients that like are always trying to just be so positive and happy and everything has to be great all the time. This book can even be like really good for them too. But yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you. This was super helpful. I love how there's so much good stuff jam-packed into like one worksheet.
Mhm.
And so my question with logistics is, so do you just present this with your client like you did with us, and then you literally work through it in a session together? And so
Yeah.
essentially kind of like, I mean, it took us about 35 minutes. So let's say you check in with your client and then you start this exercise. I'm assuming then this kind of takes up the entire session.
Yeah, usually it's split into 2 sessions. I will say it depends on the client, depends how, into it they are. But I will say the majority of the time I'll present this. I'll kind of like do a quick run through, and then we'll usually get through that first part together. So like the FEAR acronym. Then it's usually like pretty much the end of session. And so I'll either say like, hey, spend some time like this week thinking about what you would write for DARE, or like what strategies you would use for DARE. And so they'll spend like a week thinking about it. And then our next session, we'll kind of go through that second part together. So it usually is split up into 2 sessions, kind of like 1 page per session. But I've also had clients where maybe it's like a smaller goal or like a newer goal, so there aren't as many barriers, where it does kind of go like a little bit quicker. But yeah, I like really like walking them through this. And then anytime they're feeling stuck again, or they have like a barrier come up again, or they're just feeling a little bit detached from their goal, I'm like, all right, bring out this sheet again. We're going to go through it. We're going to revisit it. We're going to see if we need to add like new barriers to it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because for us, we kind of went through it. We just gave like an example, but I could see like all the things I wrote down. I could see like if I were the client, I would talk through
Yeah.
with my therapist, like with all of these things I wrote.
Yeah.
And that would probably take up like the 2 sessions.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. But yeah, clients love this. I've never really had a client that's been like resistant to it. Again, I've had like one client where at the end they were like, no, like I don't think I can commit to this. But that final question of like the pain, like which type of pain are we going to choose, was kind of like, that light bulb moment where they were like, oh, so I can't avoid like discomfort. So which one am I going to choose, right? Like the discomfort of trying, the discomfort of pushing past barriers, or this discomfort of like not growing and feeling stuck of where I'm at.
Even them not wanting to go through with it, I'm sure that probably though helps like as like for us as the therapist to know like, okay, like they said it's not worth it. So it kind of probably takes some pressure off of you too, to say, all right, I don't need to be responsible if they're like refusing to take part in this. Like we ran through it, we looked at it from every angle. They're unwilling, so I can't make them. I can kind of take a step back.
Oh yeah. And then what happens too is like they'll come back. Like that happened with my client. Like maybe a month or 2 later, came right back and was like, so can we revisit that goal again? Because I actually think it is important and I actually do want to do it now. So yeah, it takes this pressure off of you where you're like, all right, like I'm taking a back seat here and you'll come to me if you're ready.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Hopefully it was good. It was informative, and yeah.
All right. I'm just going to take a photo before we leave. Everyone wants to smile. Cheese. Cool. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Good job, Rachel.
Guys, have a good week.
Bye.